Only through me can you achieve a power greater than any
synthetic.
Learn to know the dark side of
Stellaris,
and you will be able to save your
empire
from certain death.
For a long time, the issue with Psionic Ascension has been the random number generation nature of actually trying to pull it off. With the new Stellaris Overlord DLC, that is, however, a thing of the past. I'd like to introduce you to a nation, an empire that I believe will be able to consistently reach as well, don't forget, Psionic Ascension by as early as 2232. I'm sure you can probably pull it off before 2230, and that is while still focusing on research and economy as well to output a phenomenally powerful fleet around the year 30 in the game. But without any further ado, let's dive in and find out what on earth is going on in Stellaris Overlord. This is the build I'm going to be showing off to get a guaranteed Psionic Ascension Rush in Stellaris Overlord. It is heavily reliant on the Teachers of the Shroud origin. This is one of the new origins we got with Stellaris Overlord. It gives us the latent psionic trait, it allows us to have the ability to build a shroud beacon on a starbase, and we also start in contact with the Shroudwalker enclave. The requirements for it are that we must be spiritualist of some degree, and we cannot be any type of Gestalt consciousness, that's a hive mind or a machine intelligence. When we snap over to our traits, this is the latent psionic trait that we start with Teachers of the Shroud. That means we're going to get an extra 5% of all of our research output, as well as plus 5% energy credits. That's very nice. And it's also important to know that it's an absolutely free trait, so we can still spend all of our points on other traits and still get this one on top. In this build, I'd recommend you go for something like Rapid Breeders to increase your growth speed, as you really do need more pops. Intelligent will also be very good. Combine it with the latent psionic to get a nice 15% boost to research output right from the get-go. And then of course, you definitely want to go with Aquatic at a single point. It is the most overpowered trait in Stellaris at the moment. And then Unruly and Deviance, because I really don't think you need to worry about empire size at this level. Moving over to our government ethics as well as our civics, we definitely want to go with Masterful Crafters. We can pair that with Spiritualist. Spiritualist is going to mean we start with 3 industrial districts, and Masterful Crafters means we'll get an extra building slot from having these 3 industrial districts right at the start of the game. This will mean we'll also get extra consumer goods, engineering, research and trade value from each of our artificers. That will allow us to have less artisans or artificers in order to get the right number of consumer goods for the upkeep of our nation. Otherwise, meritocracy is a really great pick. That's going to give us extra specialist pop resource output, helping our metallurgists, artificers and researchers. Xenophobe is definitely going to help us with the pop growth speed. And Militarist will be very good if we're going for something of a rush build, and this is definitely going to be looking at a 2230 war goal. And if you're enjoying this video, please help the like button reach transcendence. Whilst Teachers of the Shroud doesn't give you the same economic starting strength as something like Prosperous Unification, I think the stability we get from Teachers of the Shroud, and by stability I mean the guarantee of being able to get the Psionic Ascension within a certain time frame, is going to be very, very powerful. There's also something not mentioned here in the Teachers of the Shroud origin, and that is we basically are going to get a free Ascension perk, because we start with, or we basically counter starting with, the Mind over Matter Ascension perk. However, it will not take up any of our Ascension perk slots. So in order to get up to a full Psionic Ascension, that is the 3rd Ascension perk, Transcendence, we are going to get an extra Ascension perk in between those at our 2nd perk, one that would otherwise be taken up by Mind over Matter. As you can see right at the start of the game, as I mentioned, we do start with the 3 industrial districts, which gives us some great open building slots. However, our initial resource outputs aren't fantastic. For this reason, I would definitely recommend you clear your corvettes and you upgrade them in order to get back 145 alloys. We can sell those alloys and use the energy credits to buy extra consumer goods, and that's going to allow us to put out a colony ship right away in the second month of the game. As you're definitely going to want to put out a lot of unity, you're going to try to unlock 3 traditions here by 2230. You should start by moving over to the isolationist diplomatic stance for an extra 10% unity, and moving over to a civilian economy economic policy for the first 15 years of the game will allow us to build a glut of consumer goods before we switch over into heavy output alloy production and move to a militarized economy. So let's change to civilian right at the start. In terms of traditions, prosperity is a great opening tradition. The build speed and build cost reductions from standard construction template are fantastic, as well as the additional 5% specialist pop resource output, and the finisher ability to give us 5 stability and an extra 5% resources from jobs cannot be underestimated. For your second tradition, you could go for something like discovery. This is going to give us extra research alternatives, which is very useful, along with a nice minus 20% researcher upkeep reduction, and we're also going to have plenty of edict capacity to run something like research subsidies. Your third tradition should certainly be supremacy, or possibly unyielding, but I would recommend supremacy if you're going to go on an aggressive war footing. Completing this will allow you to unlock the War Doctrines policies, which will improve your fleet yet further, on top of all the bonuses you're going to be getting from this fantastic tradition. On your homeworld, as you will be struggling economically right at the start of the game, I think the first 2 districts you should build are generator districts. And then once you've got off the ground, start building research labs in all of those nice, juicy, available building slots. Having your species as latent psionic also means that some of your leaders will have the psychic trait. This gives fantastic bonuses no matter what type of leader they are. For scientists, we're going to get a great plus 10% research speed, that's the important one here, and also psionic research bonus. This does not increase the chance of rolling the psionic technology, but don't worry, we will not have to roll it, and I'll cover why very shortly. You should also keep an eye out on getting a new governor if you don't have a governor with the psychic ability right at the start, though probably don't go for something like righteous or resilient. Try and get something like intellectual or architectural interest. This means you'll get a boost to your research output or an improvement in your build speed and reduction in build cost on those planets, which is going to be really useful. Don't forget, if you don't have any leaders you like, you simply need to wait till the end of the year, and the leaders will be replaced with other ones. Here we've got an intellectual governor with psychic. That's a fantastic leader. I'm going to dismiss the current leader and hire that one straight away. You should also turn on the Veneration of Saints edict at the beginning. That's basically going to be a free plus 20% unity output for all of your priests. Even if you don't recruit leaders that have the psychic trait but instead have a regular trait, don't worry. Every year, I believe, it might even be every month, there is a chance that one of your leaders will blossom and develop latent psychic abilities, at which point they'll get the psychic trait without having had it right at the start. So your leaders will actually get better over time. Don't forget that you will start in contact with the Shroudwalker enclave, and the Bene Gesserit can actually do a couple of great things for us. We can either ask them what our fate will be, or ask them to send a teacher. Now both of these options will cost some influence and quite a lot of energy credits. I wouldn't actually recommend you ask what your fate will be in the first 30 years. You should instead focus on your economy and your research and try to build a strong navy so you can go out and conquer some other empires. But getting a teacher from their order is definitely a great thing to do. This will cost a straight up influence and unity cost, though the longer you leave it, the higher this cost will be, as I believe it's based on empire size or some other sort of modifier that tracks the reach of your empire. Around year 5 to 10 you should probably grab this, and then it is a decision you can enact on one of your planets. Do it on your capital. It will give you a nice juicy 5% extra amenities, 10% unity from jobs, and plus 3 unity from telepaths. Part of the reason you should do it around year 5 is that around this point I've noticed that I start running out of minerals as I've got my other colonies coming online, and I want to start putting temples down there so that we can get some nice unity production out of them instead of the terrible colonist job. And this means my capital build queue is still busy and being useful without actually needing to spend minerals on it. Interestingly, in this build, planetary capital society technology is very important and fundamental to maximizing the output of your population, as the Psi Core building is actually locked behind planetary capital. So once we have the technology and we upgrade our capital, you'll actually see that it improves both our stability and our overall resource outputs on our planet. Wow, that is a stunning change. An extra 5 stability is nice, but the main benefit we get from each of these telepaths is 5% resources from jobs. That's a total boost, if we include the stability, of 13% across all of our worlds. And when we combine that with the Shroudwalker teacher modifier, we're actually getting a lot of unity output from these telepaths as well. They also have some crime reduction, so you will never need to have enforcers on any world with a Psi Core building. Around 2217 or 2218, when you actually manage to roll the holographic cast technology, and you should be able to pretty much guarantee this if you do it correctly, you should move over from civilian economy to militarized economy. And that's because you've hopefully managed to gather 3,500 to 4,000 consumer goods at least, and you can then switch over your factory world into a forge world and start ramping up your alloy production. But what about getting the psionic theory technology? Well, usually that is what holds back a lot of psionic rush builds, is that you cannot guarantee you will roll the psionic theory technology. This technology is required in order to take the mind over matter ascension perk, which is of course the first of 2 perks you need in order to psionically ascend. However, as a Teachers of the Shroud Origin Empire, we are guaranteed the option of researching psionic theory right from the start of the game. We don't actually need to take this technology until around 2227 to 2228, because we only need this technology when we are finally ready with our 3rd tradition tree. Here we are in 2231 and I've completed 3 tradition trees. I've taken executive vigor for extra edicts, and that has allowed me to run a whole plethora of different edicts across my empire at no additional cap. And that means I'm not spending any of my precious unity on these bonuses, and 1 vision for some additional unity in order to get here a little faster with our 3rd tradition. And of course, a reduction in pop amenities usage is never a bad thing. This then means that we can finally take the Transcendence Ascension perk. That's going to give us 2 code breaking, 2 encryption, and plus 10 base intel level, but those bonuses pale in comparison to finally unlocking our full psionic potential. The psionic trait is twice as good and a little bit more than the regular latent psionic. You'll get double the bonuses to all of the resource outputs you had before, along with a nice +5 happiness. Additionally, every single leader will now gain the psychic trait. That means any leader that didn't previously have it will have it, and your admirals will be very potent. Whilst I haven't managed to get it much before 2230, I think it is possible, though it does require further work. If instead of rushing to attack the enemy at 2230, you wait for just a small amount of time to make sure the psionic traits come through and you finally get to unlock the full potential of your species, you should have quite an armada, as long as you've managed your economy quite well and put out a whole heap of alloys. In this case, I've managed to build a nice 62 destroyers by 2230 with pretty good technology that's really been helped by having these psionic traits, not only on my pops, but also on the leaders for the extra research speed. I've got nice level 2 plasma here, level 4 railguns, as well as competent energy sources and reasonable defenses. But what do you think about this new Psionic Ascension Rush build? Let me know down in the comments below. But why would you run this build over going for something like Prosperous Unification with the aquatic trait, Spiritualist and Masterful Crafters? Because that will give you a better start. You'll start with 4 additional pops and some extra districts, which means you'll have a greater economic base at the start of the game. And of course, as this game is one of snowballing, a greater start will give you a better mid game and a better late game. The guaranteed nature of always having the option to take psionic theory and therefore being able to transcend immediately when you have your 3 ascension perks unlocked cannot be understated. Even if you go for Spiritualist and you really try your hardest with Prosperous Unification, you may just simply not roll psionic theory and therefore be unable to psychically ascend. And if you cannot ascend, you won't get your hand on all of these extra bonuses, which I think more than make up for the small economic difference at the start of the game. On top of that, being able to get the Psi Core building on our capital as soon as we've upgraded it to level 2 is really, really powerful. If you can get that done around year 15, I think that is pretty much no different to having prosperous unification for only 20 years at the start of the game. Don't forget about the fact that you can construct a shroud beacon, which will set up a wormhole between one of your star bases and the Bene Gesserit system, as that could be another avenue of attack for you that other empires aren't expecting. Overall, I don't think Teachers of the Shroud will be banned in multiplayer games. I don't think it's that overpowered. What it does do is something we've been lacking for a long time with the Psionic Ascension path, and that is that it provides certainty to us when we are trying to go down the psionic route. If you can complete your Psionic Ascension by as early as 2230, which you can definitely do with Teachers of the Shroud, that sets up your empire to be a powerhouse in the mid-game. Once you've established lots of vassals over neighbouring empires, stolen some of their territory, things like that, they will be unable to stop you from getting any goal you wish to achieve in the mid to late game. They'll be busy fiddling with their robotics long into the future while you've already completed your ascension path. During this build, I mentioned guaranteeing the ability to get the alloy forge technology around 2217 or 2218. If you'd like to know how to do that and how to tech beeline, click the video on screen now.